22 November 2022. In this Warrafak moment, I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I just had to get my mind around the subject on how I want to present it. We are sitting today in a situation that our lives are in turmoil, and the most prominent reason for the problems that we have is politicians. Now, I'm a guy that has very little time for a politician, and I'm going to talk about my own life experience, and you can extrapolate and make it applicable to the country where you are and what. But just think about the things and think what I'm saying. When I was a young kid in the 50s, politicians were prominent members of a community that was selected by that community to go and represent them in Parliament. And then there's a re-election and the guy gets the votes and he goes to Parliament and he's got a 4-year term. And usually these politicians, they were either successful farmers or shopkeepers or doctors or lawyers or prominent successful people from the community. They were literate, and that was the story. The best of the community was selected to go and represent the community in Parliament. And that guy was down there in the Parliament and he had to focus on getting things done for his community. They were there in those days, we were a developing country, they were there to promote better roads to this town or village or what, better rail service, better postal service. Those were the things that these politicians were doing in Parliament. They were not paid massive salaries. They had the benefits of being provided with housing and transport and things like that, but that was it. Their salaries were on par with what generally was a salary in the private sector. And then after 4 years, that politician will make a decision whether he wants to be re-elected or he says, right guys, I've had it, I'm done, I'm going back to my farm or I'm going back to my business. More important, if he did not perform in that 4 years, that community could recall him. And that is how politics worked. And in those days, it was true to say that those politicians were selected by the people for the people. But then years went by, and in the late 70s, early 80s, a new species, I call them a species, started showing its face in our communities and in our lives. And this was that fucking professional politicians. These people were not successful private citizens. They were fuckers that went to university and they studied some tree climbing degree in humanities or politics or what the fuck you want to call it, and that made them now qualified to be a fucking politician. And the party management started putting these cunts in our lives, put them in constituencies where you're voting for the party but you're getting that shithole for a person to go and represent you. And that got just more and more sophisticated as the years went by. By the late 80s, the days were gone of good citizens being politicians. Up to that stage, we had a Minister of Transport. He was in charge of railways. He was excellent. But the guy started off as being a stoker on the railways, and he worked him up. So he understood the railways from inside out, and he ended up being the minister in charge of that portfolio, and he had a nickname, Ben Willikies, Ben Wheels. And the same in agriculture. We had a guy, Hendrik Skuman. He was a very, very successful commercial farmer, one of the big farmers of those years. And he was in charge of agriculture. It was under his leadership that all our highways were planted with grass that was edible for animals, so that the road agencies could cut those grass and bale it, and it was given to farmers in drought areas and things like that. Those were the things that Hendrik Skuman implemented. And our Minister of Health was a doctor, a real doctor. Not one with a fucking doctor degree that he bought online at some scaly website. A real medical doctor, and he was in charge of health. And our guy in charge of defense these guys were real generals, and they become the Minister of Defense. Those things, I'm sure, were similar in most Western countries. But by the 90s, that was over. This professional politician species was solid in control. And you get things like this. Look at this image. This is Annalena Baerbock, or as Alex calls her, Annalena Dambach. She is representing the Green Party in Germany. She goes to Kiev, stands in front of that useless Zelensky, and she makes a statement, I don't care what the voters say, but I will make sure that Germany supports Kiev all the way. Is that democratic? Is that an elected official or an installed puppet? And then you get this guy. And I can say a lot about him. But I'm going to say, the only thing I'm going to say is that this guy should be in a care facility for the fragile. He is not fit to be the president of the USA, and by definition, the leader of the Western world. He is not. He's a fucking joke. And then look at this image. It's a little bit of an old image, but it is still relevant. These four chicks, yes, I call them chicks. These four chicks are the ministers of defense of the EU countries. Think about that. And then for a moment, this is the Minister of Defense of Russia. Look at that, and then look at this again, and then look at this, and ask yourself, who is in shit? Which country is deep in shit? And then we get into South Africa, and we get to this oak. This Einstein is in charge of our railways and harbours. A hell of an important portfolio. The chances that this guy's IQ will clock over 80 is extremely slim. But he's in charge of transport. And then you look at this image and you ask yourself, what the fuck is this? A US general and a Russian general. It is a shame. And if I'm a betting man, my money is on the Russian. And then you look at the personnel of Joe Biden's White House. Look at this. This is his senior staff members. What do you see there? Gender confused fuckers, but they have a lot of say over your daily lives. And then we get to this person, Jacinda Ardern, sitting down there in New Zealand. And during the pestilence, she really gathered a lot of confidence and she fucked the New Zealanders up properly. Took freedoms away from them like you cannot believe. And most of all, New Zealanders as a population, 96% were jabbed. And then we look at Russia. Again, look at this. This is the president of Russia. Does he look like a geriatric? Not, for sure not. And then look at this. This is what he did for Russia so far. Made abortion illegal after 12 weeks, stopped CNN, stopped Facebook, built 30,000 churches in 30 years, taking on the LGBTQ alphabet gang. Once Soros dead or alive, it's obvious why the left wants you to hate him. Just that. Look at him, think about it, think about your country, and ask yourself, who would you like to have as your president? And then, just a reminder, these are the top 3 guys currently in Russia: Lavrov, Putin, and Shoigu. The only adults at the international table of leaders. And then we get this joke. This little kid, this chick, comes from a home where there was a parent number 1 and a parent number 2, not a mother and a father. And now she is the Prime Minister of Finland. And she managed to get Finland on a path to destruction by deciding, not asking the Finnish people, not having a referendum. She decided it's a good plan for Finland to break an age-old neutrality pact that they had with Russia and apply for membership of NATO. And she has said that she doesn't have a problem if NATO want to put nukes on the Finnish border with Russia. What the fuck is that? But that's what you get from electing these professional politicians. That is a species that must be placed on the extinction list because they will destroy all of us. And then you get this guy, Morrison, and what he did to the Aussies during the pestilence is absolutely horrific. And I cannot believe that the Australian public took this shit from this guy. I was always under the impression that the Aussies are roughly the same type of people than our Boere Afrikaners. But clearly not. This fucker herded them all into corrals like you herd sheep into corrals and jabbed them. And while we're talking about that shit, let me give you a reminder. This is the Russian Minister of Defense. And then we get to this fucker. He is now in charge of England. Take note, there are people that name him the Prime Minister. He's not a fucking Prime Minister. He's a governor. He was installed in England. Not elected, installed by the WEF King Klaus. That is where the UK is. And then I have to show this little face. This chick was very enthusiastic to use nuclear weapons against Russia. She, personally, single-handedly, would have gotten the UK blown off the map. And then this face. You must take note of this face. This person personally, single-handedly destroyed the European industrial base. She was the main peanut with the sanction war against Russia that is now destroying the European economy. She will be the reason that millions of people in Europe are going to freeze. And was she ever elected? No. Installed. And that is where we are today in 2022 with this politician species. And here is a kicker. Don't bluff yourself and think you're going to get anywhere with elections. It doesn't matter for which party you vote, you're going to get the same result. They are all the same. They just wear different colored jackets, but they're all the same. And we have seen the issues around elections. So don't bluff yourself. Then we get to this money, this guy. This guy, same issue for me. I thought the Canadians were strong, independent, hard-working men and women of honor. And then they elect this fucking cretin. And what did he do? Look at what he did to the truckers. And as sure as our sun will rise tomorrow, the fucking Canadians voted again for him. After that shit, this is the guy that is taking private people's bank accounts. This is the guy that destroyed people's lives, incomes and careers with mandates. Think about it. You, the citizens, allowed this politician species to infest your country, and instead of treating them like the plague, you cuddled them up and gave them all the controls over you. And then we get finally to South Africa. Look at this face. This person had a farm near Potchefstroom where a hell of a lot of her pigs, a pig farm that she got through BEE shit, and then she didn't pay the wages of the workers and she didn't buy food for the pigs. And the pigs on that farm died of hunger. And when the SPCA got on the scene, the pigs were already eating the other pigs. And today, she is the Minister of Defense. Think about that. She is the Minister of Defense. Let me stop. I'm getting angry. It's dark. Eskom has decided I don't need power. And I have to adapt to that. And why is Eskom fucked up? Because politicians took control over it. Why did we have a fucking problem with the pestilence? Politicians and journalists were managing the pandemic. Not doctors and scientists. Politicians and journalists. So, what can we do? I'm not going to say what we can do, because then it will be seen that I'm promoting violence. All I'm saying is, go and look what happened in the French Revolution, how the French people managed to get out from under that oppressive regime. Go and look how it happened. Go and look what happened in England in the old days. How did the English get their freedoms? Think about that. That is what you will have to do. There's no other way. And I am absolutely disgusted in what we as the people have allowed politicians to achieve. So, in conclusion, politicians is a race on their own. globally, well, not globally, in the West, they are all in the same WhatsApp group, all of them. Whether it's a politician in South Africa, politician in England, in America, Canada, Germany, they're all from the same species. And it's an invasive species that is something that is devouring us and the lives that we used to know. It is invaders. Remember that. It is invaders. If you are a farmer and the locusts descend onto your farm, what do? You spray the fuckers. Because if you don't do that, you won't have a farm. If you are a sheep farmer and predators invade your farm, what are you going to do? You have to take them out, otherwise you won't have a farm. Think about that. Fuck if you think you're going to vote yourself out of this shit. Like Alexander says, I've got a bridge to sell. And on that lekker note, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share the thing. Thank you for your support.